Everything around us is made of matter. Matter is anything that takes up space. And guess what? Matter can be in different states. First, we have solids, like a bouncy ball or a sturdy desk. Solids have a definite shape and volume. They don't change their form easily. Next up, liquids. Think of water flowing in a river or juice in your glass. Liquids take the shape of their container, but their volume stays the same. Lastly, we have gases. Air we breathe, helium in balloons, these are gases. You can't always see them, but they are all around. Gases don't have a definite shape or volume. These three states of matter, solid, liquid, and gas, are the building blocks of everything we see and touch. Now, imagine taking two or more different types of matter and combining them. That's what we call a mixture. A mixture is when two or more substances are combined, but they keep their individual properties. They don't change chemically into something new. Think about it. The air we breathe is a mixture of gases like nitrogen and oxygen. Ocean water is a mixture of salt and water. Even a simple salad is a mixture of different vegetables. Mixtures are everywhere in our daily lives. Let's dive into different types of mixtures. The first one is a solution. Solutions happen when one substance dissolves completely into another. The result? A special mixture where you can't see the different parts anymore. The substance that dissolves is called the solute, and the substance that does the dissolving is called the solvent. Take salt water, for example. Salt is the solute, and water is the solvent. When salt dissolves in water, it forms a homogeneous mixture, meaning it looks the same throughout. Other examples of solutions include sugar dissolved in water, making sugary drinks, or even air, which is a solution of different gases. Section 4. Suspensions, a cloudy mixture. Alright, so next we have suspensions. Suspensions are mixtures where the particles are, well, larger than those in solutions. These particles don't dissolve, instead they kind of just hang around, giving the mixture a cloudy appearance. Think about mixing sand and water. The sand doesn't dissolve, right? It forms this cloudy mixture. And if you leave it undisturbed for a while, the sand particles will eventually settle down at the bottom. Another good example is orange juice with pulp. You know how the pulp doesn't dissolve but stays suspended in the juice? That's why it's always a good idea to shake it well before pouring yourself a glass. Section 5. Colloids, the in-between mixture. So, last but definitely not least, we have colloids. Colloids are kind of like suspensions, but the particles are much smaller, so they don't settle out easily. Take milk, for example. Milk is a great example of a colloid. It's a mixture of tiny droplets of fat and water. These fat droplets are small enough to stay suspended in the water, which is what gives milk its cloudy appearance. Another one is gelatin. Gelatin is actually a colloid of protein molecules dispersed in water. These protein molecules form a network that traps water, creating that jiggly texture we all know and love. Section 6. Separating mixtures. Back to the basics. So, sometimes we want to separate mixtures back into their original components. And luckily, there are a lot of ways to do this. Let's start with filtration. Filtration is kind of like using a strainer. Imagine you're making pasta. You boil the pasta in water, and when it's cooked, you use a strainer to separate the solid pasta from the liquid water. That's filtration. Then there's evaporation. If you've got salt water and you want to separate the salt, you can heat the mixture. The water will evaporate, leaving the salt behind. Decantation is another handy method. It's great for separating liquids that don't mix, like oil and water. Just let the mixture settle, and the denser liquid, which is water in this case, will sink to the bottom. You can then carefully pour off the top layer, the oil, to separate them. For mixtures where one substance is magnetic, magnetism can be really useful. Think about iron filings mixed with sand. You can use a magnet to attract and separate the iron filings from the sand. And then there's emulsification. This is used to create a stable mixture of two liquids that don't usually mix, like oil and water. By adding an emulsifier like soap, you can disperse one liquid into the other in tiny droplets, creating a more stable mixture. These are just a few examples of how we can separate mixtures. Scientists use these methods and many more all the time in labs and industries. Section 7. Mixture magic. Fun activities for you. Alright, now it's time to put all that knowledge into action, with some fun activities. Activity 1. Sugar solution and evaporation. First, take a clear glass and fill it with water. Then add sugar to the water 1 spoonful at a time and stir until it dissolves. Keep adding sugar until no more dissolves. At this point, you've created a saturated solution. Now pour some of that sugar solution into a shallow dish and place it in a sunny spot. Observe the dish over a few days. What happens to the water, and what's left behind? Activity 2. Separating a mixture. For this one, gather a few materials: sand, salt, iron filings, water, a funnel, filter paper, a magnet, and some containers. Start by mixing the sand, salt, and iron filings together. Then, use a magnet to separate the iron filings from the mixture. Next, add water to the remaining mixture of sand and salt. Stir it well and let it settle. Carefully pour the salt water into a funnel lined with filter paper. The sand will be trapped by the filter paper. So, what remains on the filter paper, and what passed through? These activities are such a fun way to see mixtures and separation methods in action right before your eyes. Key points to remember. Matter exists in 3 states: solid, liquid, and gas. Mixtures are combinations of 2 or more substances that retain their properties. Solutions, suspensions, and colloids are types of mixtures with different particle sizes. We can separate mixtures using methods like filtration, evaporation, decantation, magnetism, and emulsification. Questions and answers. First, what are the 3 states of matter? They're solid, liquid, and gas. Second, what's the difference between a solution and a suspension? Well, in a solution the solute fully dissolves into the solvent, and in a suspension the particles are larger and don't dissolve, making the mixture cloudy. And finally, how can you separate salt from salt water? That's right, through evaporation. Learning about mixtures is not just educational, but it's also a lot of fun. By understanding the properties of different mixtures and how to separate them, you can unlock a whole world of scientific exploration right in your own home.